Hello there. Now then, unless you've been living under a very sizable rock for the last few weeks, then you will have heard about the impending arrival of the new Dwarfs for Warhammer. So I'm going to go through some of the first week of releases here and give you my thoughts on some of them. And then maybe I'll talk about some of the future releases that should be coming up in the next few weeks at the end. So let's start off with the hammerers here. Now, my main problem with the old hammerers was that they were all in exactly the same kind of weird looking pose. These hammerers are definitely an improvement, I would say. Some people aren't keen on the flat helmets, but I don't mind those. The hammers are quite large, as you'd expect, and the armour is a big improvement. The poses, they are relatively single pose, as is often the case with all these new kits that are supposed to be ranked up. It's as if an actual regiment of troops were trained to be in the same pose, though. It's not like they've just cast 50 of the same man and then changed his hat, or something like that. It does actually look like they've been well drilled to hold that posture, because you can see they're not all holding their hammers at exactly the same angle, or at exactly the same height. There is a little bit of variation there, so I like that. And you can see the detail here on some of the weapons and the horn. Well, they are supposed to be the king's personal bodyguard, so that is quite ornate. Definitely a step up from the old models. It also makes the long beards that you can see here with the great weapons, they can also be given hand weapon and shield. Personally, I think with the great weapons they look possibly a little too similar to the hammerers, since they have the same body. It's really just the helmet and I believe the shoulder pads, and then the axe head that will change. A different banner and musician and all that stuff. But I probably would field them with the hand weapon and shield, just through the similarity, if I was going to use both units. I wouldn't want them to look too similar like that. I would also use probably even less gold than they have, and use more gold on the hammerers, just to separate them even more. You can tell these are long beards though, can't you? Look at the length of those beards. You're not a real long beard unless you have to tuck it into your boots to stop it dragging along the floor. Yeah, those guys are going to have some serious back issues as they get older, with those beards weighing down their chins. But dwarfs aren't the kind to grumble about that kind of thing. You can see the shield designs and some of the ornate axe heads there. Very nice indeed. The box that can be turned into either of these units is £30 for 10. Not quite in Witch Elf territory, which would be criminal. It's still a little on the expensive side, but I've looked around and there's a few websites offering them for £24, which is much more reasonable. Next we've got this Dragon Slayer. Now, I have mixed feelings on these models that come with these ornate bases. On the one hand, I think it's cool that he's not just standing on the ground. On the other hand, every single person that buys this model, they're going to be standing on the same dragon statue head. I would rather they sold the models just as they are, with a plain base, and then sold a set of ornate bases. Perhaps a set of ornate dwarf bases, dark elf bases, and so on. And then you could mix them up, so you wouldn't have exactly the same model on the same piece. You might be able to do that anyway, if you buy multiple plastic kits. But you're probably not going to get that many pieces on them that are suitable for the model. So that's something I'd like to see them do, just to add a bit more variety. But the actual model itself, I'm kind of getting mixed signals from it. On the one hand, he looks like he's really active and ready to fight. He just wants to start swinging the axe round. He's got little axes on his beard. He's going to kill something. But on the other hand, he's wearing his pyjamas, which suggests that he's on his way to bed. And he's got black rings around his eyes as well, so he does look tired. So I'm just going to assume that he was in bed and he was just woken up by the sound of some kind of hideous monster outside, and he can go and seek his death. But he's going to look grumpy about it because he was just disturbed. this model is £13 for one plastic model, which, yes, is totally obscene, but it's in keeping with the rest of their models that they've been releasing lately, so I won't be buying one because I've already got enough dwarf character models, to be honest, which is a reason I won't be buying this one either. Belagar Ironhammer. This is the guy from the front of the first issue with the new slim white dwarf on his oath stone there. It's a nice model, of course. Interesting little back banner. That'll help him stand out a bit more from the rest of the unit. Especially if all the new units are going to be as ornate as the Hammerers and the Longbeards were. The characters are really going to have to work hard to stand out and not look plain next to them. So this is definitely a good start towards that. Again, £13, so it's not one I'm going to be paying for. I've got plenty of characters as it is. But he is nice. You can see the nice detail in these close-up shots here. Nice shield. There are a couple of one-click bundles, as there always are in these situations. Usually you don't save anything, and then sometimes you're actually paying more for the convenience of not having to click the page 5 extra times, so I suppose you are saving yourself on future arthritis or repetitive strain injury. So yeah, I can understand why they charge you an extra £5 for that. But this one particular one-click bundle contains the new Dragon Slayer and then a whole unit of the old metal Slayers. This is one of the few metal units that hasn't been taken down yet, so I can only imagine they just had tons of these lying around, and this is their desperate attempt to shift them on before they release a new plastic Slayer kit, because it's been long enough. These have been around since... they must have been there since the early 90s. I remember seeing these way back in the day. But I think there is actually a very small saving if you want this bundle, so if you're into the old metal Slayers and you don't already have lots of them, it's going to be a rare situation because they've been out for so long. Anyone who likes them, I would imagine, would already have them. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Maybe the people out there that think this is a great offer and they're going to get out there and snap it up. But you are only saving a couple of pounds if my calculations are correct. And the models are about to be replaced if rumour is to be believed. And if they're not going to be replaced in this month-long release, I would imagine they're not going to be too far off to probably bring them out later in the year, maybe. And they're obviously replacing everything that was in metal and fine cast as they go through all these ranges, so it would be really odd if they were still there. Now, the rumour circulating at the moment is that next week there's going to be an engineer and another character, a Rune Lord, I think, and a gyrocopter, which can be made into two different variants, one with a gun and one with bombs, something like that. So I'm looking forward to see how that looks, because I'm holding on to my money at the moment until the book comes out, which presumably is going to be with the last set of releases, which possibly be Iron Breakers, but we'll see. I'm not hesitant to buy because I want to get the most powerful units and I haven't seen in the book. It's because I don't want to buy the new Hammerers, for example, and then be totally blown away by something that comes out in 3 weeks that looks even better, and I want even more of those. So I'm just holding on to my money, and then when the book comes out at the end, if there are any models that haven't been released yet, presumably there'll be pictures of them in the book. So I'll look in there, and if everything hasn't come out yet, have a look through, see what's going to be coming, and then decide what to spend my limited budget on. Especially after spending £30 on a book, unless they bump up the price of those even more. I do have all the previous Dwarf Army books, so I think I'm going to do a video looking through those after the new book has been announced, just to whet people's appetites a bit for the new one. And then I'm hoping to review the new Dwarf Army book on the day of release if I can. Because ever since I was a little boy, I dreamed of reviewing an army book on the day of release, but I was never able to. Yeah, I know it's totally useless just having a quick look inside, but there are a few things, a few points that people expect to see drastic changes on People are expecting, for example, the organ gun's rules to completely change, gyrocopter no longer having partial hits, things like that. A few points values changing, the rune system, some people think it's going to be completely overhauled. So there's a few things that you'll just be able to tell at first glance just by looking in the book. You won't be able to necessarily draw too many conclusions from it, but it will satisfy a bit of curiosity. So, next week, I shall look at the next batch of releases and tell you what I think of those. Stick around.